Welcome. Hot Takes Tony. Welcome to the pod. Today we're going to talk about this New York City election. You know, I got the red beret on. Shout out to my dude Curtis Sliwa. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the right on right Civil War as well. So getting right into it with this New York City mayoral race. I am more on the left, actually, so I was more aligned with Zohran Mamdani. I was more aligned with him. But, Curtis Sliwa, man, you got to love this guy, right? Dude got shot like 29 times, has like 17 cats, has like 2,000 gang members. Like, dude is certified. He's Brooklyn certified. Brooklyn, he was born. Brooklyn, he will die. Dude is a ride or die for New York City. So if he won, I would not be mad. Dude is New York through and through. You know what I mean? He's not the mayor New York City needs, but he's definitely the mayor New York City deserves, I think is a good way of putting it. So shout out to him. Shout out to, obviously, Zohran for winning. He pulled the win. I can't say he was an underdog. In the past couple months, he's been leading the polls. And I think, everyone assumed he was going to win at this point, so that's not surprising. I am surprised that COVID Como got the amount of votes he did. I'll be honest with you, I was arguing with people on social media saying, hey, you guys, don't vote for Curtis Sliwa. Vote for Curtis Sliwa is a vote for Zohran or whatever. They were trying to discourage Sliwa voters into voting for Cuomo, right? Cuomo. I can't fucking pronounce this guy's name. And I was like, dude, Curtis is like loved way more than Cuomo is. It's like the way that I've always looked at it is you're going to vote for someone you love before you're going to vote for like a lesser of two evils kind of thing, right? So I didn't understand that, and I would be arguing with people saying, man, when it's all said and done, Curtis is going to get way more votes than Cuomo will. And I was wrong. I did not expect that. I'm kind of disappointed in New York for that. Like really, Cuomo shouldn't have even been in the race. Like, if we're being frank, he was a disgraced governor. Dude was getting perverted with his Italian greasy hairy hands. And I'm hairy and I'm Italian, so I'm allowed to say that. You can't sue me, you can't get me, you can't cancel me. I'm uncancelable. And I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say because that's what Hot Take Tony does. And yes, I just spoke about myself in the third person, or he spoke about himself in the third person, or would that be the second person? I don't know. Anyway, getting off track. So yeah, I mean, I was really surprised Cuomo got the amount of votes that he did. That was really disappointing to me. I was not expecting that. I'm glad that Zohran was able to pull it off because he had the entire establishment against him. You know what I mean? He had even really the Democratic establishment. They were not doing him any favors, and for Hakeem to, on the final lap be like, oh yeah, this is us, man, this is what we're doing, yeah, Team Democrats, baby. Like, get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? Like we don't. No, you're out of here, Hakeem. APAC Shakur. Like, we're done with you, bro. We're done with you, brother. We're done with you. So you got to get up out of here. You're getting primaried. Chuck Schumer getting primaried. Nancy Pelosi getting retired. Maxine Walters, whatever the hell are that, getting retired. Putting them in the nursing home where they belong. You know what I mean? Mitch McConnell, that's y'all's problem. That's the floor's problem. That's really the floor's problem. If you think that's a problem, Mitch McConnell is a problem for floors. You know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, getting back on track here. What were we talking about? So the NYC mayor election, right? So everyone was getting all, getting their panties in a twist about him being a democratic socialist and all this kind of stuff. But they had to pivot towards the Muslim thing. They had to really focus on that because, spoiler alert, guys, socialism is getting a little more popular these days amongst these millennials, and these Gen Zers with their skinny pants and their baggy pants and their avocado peanut butter jelly toast. You know what I mean? It's the cost of living is ridiculous. I can't imagine NYC. People can't afford to live in an apartment, bro. They can't afford to live in an apartment. Forget a house. A house. We're not even talking about. Are we talking about houses, dog? You talking about houses? We talking about a studio apartments. Motherfuckers got roommates for studio apartments, dog. Like, nah, it ain't working. It ain't happening. The American working class is working harder than it's ever worked before. Its wages are worth less than they've ever been worth before in modern American history anyway. It's not working. So socialism is more appealing. The establishment knows that. The billionaires know that. The Democrat establishment knows that. The Republican establishment knows that. So they couldn't focus on the socialism thing too hard. They had to focus on the Muslim thing because, immigration, if we're being real, is a concern, still a big concern among the majority of Americans. We got to be honest about that. We got to call a spade, and they know that, and that's why, they use that as the targeting factor. New York City, though, has always been a city of immigrants, so I don't really think that was meant for New York. You'd think that was a tactic to change the New York City mayoral race. Really what that was a tactic for was the country at large, because they want Zohran to be a catalyst. They want Zohran to fail, and they want Zohran to be as scary and jihadist as possible. And they have to focus on the Muslim stuff, right? They have to focus on the un-American stuff. And it is harder to sell that, it's harder to sell that than socialism these days. Maybe 10, 20 years ago, it would have been the reverse. I don't know. But that's what they're focusing on. And Zohran, he's about, and again, I'll probably get shit for this from somebody. It's all good though. But his wife doesn't even cover her hair, dude. He's about as Muslim as your friend Steve that goes to church once a year is Christian, right? I mean, I'm not disparaging Zohran. I'm not trying to put his, spiritual devotions or his faith into question. But I'm just saying, like, this, to compare him to some Muslim extremist jihadist, it's just, it doesn't line up. His wife doesn't even cover her hair. And if we're being serious, like, that's a pretty basic thing if you're a serious Muslim. Like, that's kind of step one, really. She doesn't even do that. She looks, if you passed her in the street, she just looks like some regular New York millennial hipster, really. Even focusing on the Muslim thing, I guess that's my point. Even focusing on the Muslim thing it's a bad strategy for him. So it didn't really work out. Zohran won. What are my hopes? Again, you see me with the red beret. I am a big Curtis Sliwa fan. I'm going to just keep it real. I'm going to keep it funky, keep it creamy with you. Rest in peace, Steve Bridges. I'm going to keep it 100 with you guys. I love Curtis Sliwa. I'm a big fan of Curtis. Curtis was, really, I would say like 90% of his campaign, it was almost like he was defending Zohran for the majority of it. I mean, obviously, he hates Cuomo. I mean, he hates Cuomo like Cuomo was the one who shot him, bro. Like, he hates Cuomo. So he was, he was like, it was on site. Like, he was ready. He was gonna go down in a sinking ship, in a Mayday airplane. Like, dude was ready to die to do as much harm to Cuomo as he possibly could, and I respect that. That is respect. But he was like defending Zohran a lot during the campaign, and they kind of had like this, buddy, buddy comedy kind of thing going on for the majority of the campaign. Obviously, towards the end, Curtis had to, criticize Zohran. He had to distance himself. And I understand that. Politics is politics. Because if you are just going to agree with a candidate you're running against, there's no point of you running against them. So I completely get it. But I hope Zohran appoints him for something, because he's just such a beloved New York character. Maybe the guy isn't like the brightest political mind or whatever, but he's New York. And I mean, I think it's important that Zohran bridges that gap between like this kind of millennial, hipster, new young kind of thoughtful, cerebral kind of group of voters with the working class, grit, the kind of people that Curtis Sliwa represents. Curtis seems like a very honest man. I would trust him with any kind of position that Zohran would put him in. And I think putting Curtis as, like, I don't know if they appoint like the chief of police, the police commissioner, putting him in that position, that would say a lot, because he does have to figure out this thing with the police. He said things that obviously a lot of big police supporters and the police themselves probably aren't happy with, but he's got to make a move of uniting with them. But it doesn't mean he has to sacrifice his principles. Doesn't mean he shouldn't hold police accountable. But the police exist, right? So I just think, again, keeping it real, I'm not a defund the police kind of guy. I'm a reform the police kind of guy. And I think that's what the defund the police movement actually started as. Like, hey, we don't need these guys, with guns, starting. That doesn't need to be the starting point if somebody is mentally ill, if somebody's having a mental break. Obviously, we can't let someone, just because they're having a mental break, endanger anyone else, right? That's not okay. So you still need the presence to contain the situation, but you should still have psychologically trained professionals in that field there for those cases. And I think that's, a big thing that Zohran wants to do. And then just kind of try to be creative the best way you can with this police thing. You want, look, it's a hard job. You gotta have police, I think, but you gotta hold them accountable at the same time. And it's this, you gotta walk this line of saying, I want police in my city, but if you do some shit that's not okay, like, you're done. Like, we're not going to be doing this thing where you can, go way past the normal recourse of things, and you can be abusive with a citizen that is unjustified, and then just expect to keep your job and, like, not be, criminally penalized. If you become a criminal, then you're a criminal. Like, it's not just because you're a police officer doesn't mean you have no way of ever becoming a criminal. Like, once you cross the line of breaking the law, you are now a criminal as well. So it's just we have to have these conversations. We have to have a way to iron this stuff out. I'm not mayor right now. I'm not a politician at the moment, so it's easy to talk the talk, I suppose. But long story short, I think Zohran appointing Curtis as some kind of position that does things with the police, that would be huge. I think Zohran trusts Curtis. I think even though they have their disagreements about things, he knows Curtis is a good man. He knows Curtis is honest. And obviously, they get along, right? As Curtis says, you glazing me, Zohran. So they have a good thing, and I think that's appointing him would be a great way to bridge a lot of the New Yorkers that didn't vote for Zohran, that are apprehensive about him. I think that would say a lot. Cuomo can eat a dick. Fuck him. We don't need to bring him into anything. He was the billionaires and the Zionist candidate. That's what Cuomo was. He was sponsored by the billionaires and sponsored by the Zionists. That's who wanted Cuomo. And, again, a lot of people voted for Cuomo, but a lot of people are stupid, and a lot of people do what the news tells them to do. So it's just not. Thank goodness we live in the age that we live in. If this was even 10 years ago, Zohran probably wouldn't have stood a chance, because the corporate media and the corporate machine and the billionaires had such a bigger influence on, information and politics and things like that. Now we are so connected with the internet. Even when they try controlling it, they can't beat us. Things are just the way that culture is shifting. We're moving faster than they can. And that's a great segue to the next topic, right? Great segue. Great, Tony. Good job, man. You're awesome. Which is the right on right civil war. So, obviously, if you are into political pundits and you watch things about politics on YouTube, Spotify, whatever, you know that there's this civil war going on. You've heard the things about Tucker, Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, Steven Crowder, now Nick Fuentes. Now we bring Nick Fuentes in the mix. And they're acting like Nick Fuentes was the straw that broke the camel's back here. He wasn't. It's Israel. And they're going to, the pro-Israel side, the Zionist neocons, they are trying to make it not that. They are trying to make it about being Jewish or about being anti-Semitic or about being a Nazi. That's what they're doing. And don't get me wrong, Nick Fuentes has said some Nazi stuff. He said some white supremacist stuff. So I'm not here to defend Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes can speak for himself. But that's, them pretending that Nick Fuentes was the cause of all this. It's not. So I'm not going to pay that any mind. They're using Nick Fuentes because he's such a controversial figure as an excuse to do what they're doing now, which is going full on cancel culture on the anti-Israel right. Which is interesting because Trump is a paradox. Trump is, say what you want about Trump and, his policies or whatever, but just in taking yourself, out big picture, Trump is a paradox. Trump is very pro-Israel, obviously, in terms of his policy, but he's helped create the most anti-Israel sentiment by a culture that he pushed to get himself elected, which is this whole America First movement, right? And basically what that was telling Americans is like, hey, for too long, we've been giving all our resources, our money, our energy, our focus to all these other countries, while our country has fallen into decay, into disarray. The infrastructure is falling apart. Affordability, the working class is destroyed. Middle class obliterated, right? While we've been focused on all these other countries, while we've outsourced jobs, while we've, had all these big military interventions, overthrown governments, all this stuff, right? Whether it's the neoliberal side of donating foreign aid and money and food, or it's the neocon side of using our military to topple regimes and all that kind of stuff, right? So America, by the time Trump ran in 2016, Americans were pretty much over this whole charade that we've been doing the past 50 years. And, that's why you had Bernie and you had Trump as the most popular political candidates, both very anti-war, anti-intervention, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, Trump, gets into office in his second term, and he really starts cutting spending to all of the foreign countries that we were sending money to, sending aid to. But one, right? He leaves one that he doesn't stop sending money to. In fact, he actually sends them more money, and that's Israel. So before this, Israel got to kind of hide in the pack of all the countries we would send aid to, right? It would get to kind of blend in, with all these people and everything, all these other countries, in terms of policy, so on and so forth. But by Trump doing what he did by like saying, hey, Europe, you're on your own. Hey, Africa, you're on your own. But Israel, we're going to not only keep sending you that 3.1 billion or whatever they say it is, the number's way higher, guys. The numbers in the past 2 years, we've given them, I think it might be like $30 billion. So I don't know when they only got $3.1 billion from us, but it was a long time ago. They've been getting way more money, especially under Trump, but also Biden. So, hey, we're not letting Biden off the hook for this Israel thing. Anyway, though, focusing on the right, I'm getting kind of off track a little bit. So this Israel topic has become more and more popular among Americans to discuss, but they themselves have become less and less popular. Americans favor them as little as they ever have. Israel has completely lost the Gen Z American support on both sides, on the left and the right. Israel knows it has a problem with American support, and this is kind of what Charlie Kirk, they were trying to get Charlie Kirk to do a lot more towards the end of his life, as they were really pressing him like, hey, you got to try to shift the narrative, you got to try to shift the culture. And, look, Charlie Kirk, that's a different conversation. I'm not going to sit here. We're not going to have a whole discussion about the nuance of Charlie Kirk. We're not going to do that right now. But long story short, Charlie Kirk, a lot of his funding originally came from Zionists, right? He was helping push a positive narrative about Israel. What they didn't realize is that Charlie Kirk was a young guy, and young people are constantly kind of thinking about things, and they're still in the process of shifting their belief system. So when you're like 18, you're a lot easier to guide and mold. And this is why, soldiers, it's better to have soldiers that are super young like that. If you have, a bunch of 30-year-olds as soldiers, they're gonna be pretty analytical about, hey, I don't know about this one, guys. I don't know about this one, boss man. But as Charlie got older and, he was around, he put himself around people who disagreed with him. That was what he was doing. And a lot of times that was good for him. He would get great views on, debating people, and he was super polished on not only making his points, but guiding the people he was debating to kind of get them into like a trap, basically. So he was very talented at that. But it got to the point where even he could not promote, like, with a straight face, the Israel BS. He was as polished as he was, as surgical as he was, of a debater and all this kind of stuff of, promoting his propaganda. The Israel thing, it got to a point where even he couldn't sell it anymore. And so he's got his supporters who are coming to his events. And now it's one thing. It was one thing when he was just having to debate the left, but it got to a point where he's having to not only debate the left-wing students, he's having to debate the right-wing students about Israel. The poor guy couldn't catch a break at the end. And he was just like, look, I don't, this isn't on me anymore. You guys have made this mess, Israel. It's not my job to clean, do your PR. I guess it kind of was because they were paying him money to do it, but you get what I mean. So he was really starting to turn the tide there. And I do think he thought, because he had such a big following, that he really didn't need the Zionist anymore. I think that they knew he thought that, and you can do what you want with the rest of that information. But I think we kind of know that what all these kind of background discussions were. I'm not going to get into conspiracy stuff, whatever. Again, separate video. Long story short, though, the issue of Israel has caused this big division on the right, where you have what I would call the actual American first right, who are consistent about being anti-interventionist, not wanting to send, foreign aid, and, basically, let's not attack countries that don't attack us, right? Pretty straightforward principle. something that I'm on the left and I agree with. And really, if you're actually on the left, you should agree with this principle. This should not be a partisan issue if you're an American, or really, I would hope that other people in other countries have the same belief too. But that's what's going on. So the neocons, who it's not good business for them to be anti-interventionist, because they've helped create the military-industrial complex, right? And they have, obviously there's this thing going on with Israel where, Israel, say what you want, man, they got a lot of influence over us, right? Do they control our entire country? I don't know, but they definitely have control of our country. And some control is too much control if you're a foreign country. You should not have any control over my country. And again, something both the left and the right should agree on. But another point of contention, right, where the pro-Israel right, they'll say if you bring this stuff up, you're anti-Semitic. And they try to do this. Any criticism of Israel is a criticism of the Jews. It's not. So they keep trying to push this narrative and this defense, and they're trying to basically cancel the anti-Israel right. They're calling them Nazis. They're calling them anti-Semitic. They're calling them racist. And the irony is that, like, Ben Shapiro, for example, on the pro-Israel right, he was happy to be Mr. Free Speech and, the left is trying to cancel me, but I'm a naughty boy and I just say what I want, and because that's what America's all about. We say what we want. We don't believe in cancel culture. I'm a free speech absolutist, whatever the fuck, right? He was fine taking that stance when the left was trying to cancel him or cancel other people. But and the universe is, I love the universe because the universe always shows the truth. The universe the universe is anti-bullshit. The universe does not fuck around. It will always expose you. You can't hide in the darkness from the light forever. So now Ben Shapiro and the Zionist right, the neocons, they're trying to cancel Tucker. They're not trying to, they're bringing up Nick Fuentes, but they're not actually trying to cancel Nick Fuentes. They're trying to cancel Tucker, and they're trying to cancel people that are associated with Nick Fuentes. That's what they're trying to do. They need Nick Fuentes to be there, to be this piece to say, look at this Nazi. Tucker platformed him, so-and-so Dave Smith platformed him. We got to these are the undesirables. We got to get rid of these guys, right? They're anti-Semitic. They hate Jews, blah, blah, blah. Or they hate, that's another thing, this Dinesh D'Souza, whatever the fuck his name is, the guy who makes all those stupid documentaries. Now he's going on about, they not only hate Jews, they also hate Indians. They hate Hindus or whatever. And it's like, what pisses me off the most is hypocrisy. I don't have to agree with your political views, but at least be consistent with them. At least, have consistent, stand on shit. You know what I mean? If you're going to espouse some beliefs, stand on that shit. Don't, shift and turn when it's convenient. So, these same guys who were talking about, all the left does is call everything racist and, there's no racism anymore. There's no sexism anymore. The second that someone who looks like them or has their ethnicity gets criticized, America's racist, but it's just that they're racist against your group, right? They're not racist against anybody else. It's your group. When Ben Shapiro was listing off all of Nick Fuentes' beliefs in terms of all the groups he hates, he put blacks last. He, of course, put Jews first. He's like, Nick Fuentes, he hates the Jews. He hates Indian people. He hates Mexicans. He hates women. He got all the way down the list, and then he said black people. And it's so funny. Like, if you can't have an honest conversation about racism and just be like, regardless of the impacts of racism in our modern society, that can be debatable. But when you talk about like the issues of white supremacy in America and racism in America, and you put black people at the bottom of the list of the victims, I mean that's how I know you're fucking delusional, dude. That's how I know you're a space cadet. You're fucking out of there. And it's just some people can't see their own bullshit. They can't smell it. I believe that with Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro, I think he is a smart guy, but he can't see his own bullshit. I feel like I have a good lie detector in me, and I think he truly believes that Jewish people are the most, persecuted people in America. And he's not the only one. I talked about being Italian earlier. I'm also half Jewish technically. My mom's side is Jewish, right? And look, I grew up with these people, lovely people, nothing but love for them. Some of the sweetest people you'll ever meet. But they themselves have a lot of that belief where they think that Jews are the biggest, victims of the planet. And, for America, like, America's been a very generous and safe place for Jewish people. So, as an American, which is what I am. I'm an American before I'm Jewish, before I'm Italian, before I'm anything else. I am an American. I'm American first. That's what my identity is. That's what my grandparents who migrated here wanted me to be. If they wanted me to be something else, they would have said that. And they wouldn't have signed off on the immigration papers, by the way, that denounced any foreign countries, any foreign belief systems. You used to have to sign off on all this stuff when you migrated, basically saying that you will not put anything above America. This was a common thing. So they wouldn't have done that if they wanted me to be something else. That's what I am, and I feel like it would be disrespectful towards them to put some other racial, ethnic, religious, any kind of identity above that. That's not what they wanted. So I don't want to do them a disservice, really. But this the whole identity politics thing, it's it happens on both sides. It's used when it's convenient. There's no consistency with it, which is why I'm against it. Because it's just used as a tool. There's no actual utility. There's no moral utility for it. So it's just used as a political tool. It's used as a political weapon. I'm against it. It's honestly used to divide the working class. It's a capitalist tool. So, I'm not ever going to be about identity politics. But nonetheless, as you can kind of imagine, this is a huge division, a dividing point within the right. And it's the pro-Israel side, the neocons, they're losing the battle. I mean, they're grasping at straws at this point. That's why they're going so hard. And a side is losing when you see them pulling every possible thing out that they can. The side that's winning are the ones who are the calm, collected ones. You could tell that. You could tell if you're watching like a sport game or something like that. The team that is losing and they gotta, you see it in their demeanor. They're getting more and more stressed out. They're getting more and more wore down. They're looking depressed. They're getting angry. And the side that's up, they're smiling, they're having fun with it, you know what I mean? They're loose, they're calm, they're relaxed. The pro-Israel side is stressing, bro, because they're losing. And they should lose. They absolutely should lose. Israel should have never gotten in this position with control over American politicians that it is. It shouldn't have. I don't know how, we allowed that to happen. It's probably taken decades for it to get as bad as it is now. But we're taking that away. We're done with it, man. We're absolutely done on the left and right. And I respect the people on the right who are pulling away from that. And I know I'm not on the right, so maybe I'm speaking out of house, right? Maybe I'm speaking out of turn. But, when I see this kind of civil war and everything on the right, and I see the neocons, because they've held the power of the conservative movement for so long, they are treating the anti-Israel side as the non-conservatives. They call them the woke right? Which doesn't make sense because how they criticize woke before are the people who are trying to cancel you for saying bad words or whatever. But the woke right are the ones saying bad words that the other right are trying to cancel. So if anyone's the woke right, it's definitely the pro-Israel side. But they're trying to label them. They're trying to label them anti-America, anti-MAGA, all this kind of stuff. When really the neocons were the ones that were, against Trump. They were the never Trumpers, right? Which is really funny. And again, to their defense, Trump is giving them what they want. He's about to start a war in Venezuela. So he calling him the anti-war candidate is bullshit because he's not. But nonetheless, I give him credit because sometimes creating a culture and creating a movement is actually better than the policy, because the policy will come and go. Trump is going to come and go, right? But he's created this culture, this movement, this American first idea that exist on both the left and the right, and it actually can unify Americans and really more importantly unify the working class and start creating policies that are long lasting, that get us back to the days of FDR, of Dwight Eisenhower, that make it to where the working class can not only get by, they can have a pretty comfy life, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to be ashamed of for that. You should absolutely want that. You deserve that. You deserve the life that your grandparents had 50, 70, whatever years ago, right? Doesn't mean it should just be handed to you. You still should work. You still need to be productive in society. We need productive citizens in our nation. We need productive citizens in society because we need to be productive to help those who are disabled, to help those who are elderly, to help those who can't help themselves. They need us, right? So it is important. You'll never hear me encourage people to be lazy or anything like that. We need to work hard so the people who can't work can be taken care of, because that's what community is all about. That's what family is all about. And being a nation is really being one big family. So that's pretty much it. Let's see. God dang, man, 37 minutes. Holy smokes. I was really trying to keep this short, guys, and oh man, that's rough. All right, well, it's been well. Peace and love.